All right, let's take a look at the law of sines. We did law of cosines today in class, and now we're going to look at the law of sines. If you'll remember the law of cosines, the two cases we used were side, 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 and side, angle, side. And one way that I told you to know that you had to use law of cosines is that all the letters would be different. Okay, so we're going to look at two more cases today, or in this notes in this video. We're going to look at the angle, angle, side case, and we're going to look at the angle, side, angle case. And that's just two more cases, and in these we're going to use the law of sines. So here's what an angle side case would look like. So let's say that the two angles I had were let's say capital A and capital B, that we were looking at this angle and this angle here. Okay, in order for it to be angle, angle, side, my next side that I would use would be lowercase a over here. So if I went angle, angle, and then here is my side, I have an angle, angle, side stipulation going on here, in which I would use the law of sines. Okay, angle, side, angle would look something like this. Let's just say that we were using capital A and capital B again as my angles. Now, if I was going to look at an angle, side angle scenario, lowercase c would be my side that I would use there because it's the side in between the two angles. Now, what I want you to notice, though, is this. When we did law of cosine problems, notice that we were given at least two sides. When we're doing law of sines problems, we're giving at least two angles. The other thing I want you to notice is for law of cosines, all the letters were different. In other words, you would have an A, B, and a C. With law of sine problems, notice what I have circled here. Capital A, capital B, but then we have a lowercase a. So we have two letters that are in common. Over here, notice capital A, capital B, we don't have, and we're given lowercase c, which means we don't have a letter in common, but we can easily find capital C because we know that all the angles in a triangle add up to be 180 degrees. So if I were to find capital C here really quick, I now would have a common letter in capital C and lowercase c. All right, so let's take a look at what the law of sines is. This is your formula for law of sines, a little bit easier than law of cosines. You do sine of capital A over A equals sine of capital B over B equals sine of capital C over C. Now, you won't use all three of these. You'll only be setting up two of them. So, for example, you might set your problem up like this, which means we have a proportion. And if we have a proportion, then we just cross multiply to solve it. So let me show you an example here of how the law of sines works. All right, so triangle ABC, capital B is 64, capital B is 38. Lowercase b is 9. So if I'm looking at this, I don't really have to worry about is it angle, angle, side, or angle, side, angle, or whatever. When I look at this, I notice I have a capital B and a lowercase b. In other words, all my letters are not different. I've got two that are the same, so that means I can use the law of sines to solve this. Now, it says to solve the triangle. When we solve the triangle, we have to find all the angles and all the sides. Now, here's the nice thing. You're always going to be given three pieces of information. So I'm already halfway done. B is 64, C is 38, lowercase b is 9. I just need to find the rest of the information. Well, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to find capital A. And what I know is that all these angles have to add up to be 180. So if I take 180 and I subtract 64 and I subtract 38, that is going to tell me capital A. And that gives me 78 degrees. And that is a capital A. So the nice thing about given two angles, you can find a third angle really quick just by subtracting your angles from 180. Okay? Now, we need to find lowercase a and lowercase c. So I'm going to do that, and I'm going to use the law of sines because I know lowercase or capital B and lowercase b. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to find lowercase a here. So let's just solve for that first. Okay, and here's the way I'm going to set that up. I'm going to set it up using sine of A, sine of capital A over A, and then I have to use sine of capital B over B because that is the letters that I have in common. You have to use those when we're solving. So let's just set it up here. So we go sine of 78 degrees over lowercase a equals sine of 64 degrees over 9. And now since we have a proportion, we cross multiply. So here that gives me 9 times the sine of 78, and here I get a times the sine of 64, and I'm going to divide both sides by the sine of 64. Now here's what's nice is I can just type that into my calculator here. Okay, so let's take a look at how we would put that in. So I'm just going to go 9 sine 78, close my parentheses after the 78, divided by, and now I'm going to go ahead and put this in parentheses. You don't really have to, but I'm just going to here because I like to get in the habit of doing that. And that comes out to be 9.794, but we're going to round to one decimal place, so I'm going to make that 9.8. So 9.8 is A. So I just solved for A, which is 9.8 feet, and notice that answer is really in line with my other side of 9 feet. And now I have to go into it again for C, because you can't do Pythagorean theorem because we do not have a right triangle. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the exact same problem, except I'm going to say sine of capital C over lowercase c equals sine of capital B over lowercase b. So it's basically, it's going to work the same way, except instead of A, I'm using C. So sine of 38 over C equals sine of 64 over 9. Again, cross multiply. 9 sine of 38 equals C sine of 64. Divide by the sine of 64. So it's basically the exact same problem that we did. So I'm just going to call it back up, except we don't have the sine, 9 sine of 78, we have 9 sine of 38. And that gives me, we're just going to round it to 6.2 equal to C. So C is 6.2 feet. And you have just solved the triangle. I'm going to show you another example of the other case, of the angle side angle case, when we get into class on next time.